Under the dim lights of an old tavern in Taipei, whispers floated among gangsters about a name that struck fear into the heart of Taiwan's criminal underworld ghost who weeps. A ruthless killer with no remorse, he had taken down 6 notorious crime bosses, topping the list of the island's most dangerous gunmen. No one knew where he came from. All they knew was that death followed wherever he went. For 5 long years, the gang he led was behind hundreds of bloody crimes, sending chills down the spines of both police and fellow outlaws. And yet, despite being a cold-blooded assassin, when he finally came face to face with death, the one thing he longed for wasn't money or power, but a wedding with the woman he loved. February 11th, 1989, Chiayi City, Taiwan. A feared mob boss named Luo Kundao arrived with 8 of his men to meet representatives from another gang for a business negotiation. Luo was a seasoned player in the underworld, hardened by years in the game. Arrogant, but not reckless. Knowing that talks might break down, he and his crew came armed with M1911 military pistols, .45 caliber sidearms once used by the US military in the Vietnam War. Across the table sat only 2 men, each carrying a small bag. Seeing how outnumbered they were, Luo Kundao grew even more confident that he held all the power, but things never go as planned. The conversation turned heated, arguments flared, and tensions escalated fast. Luo signaled his men to ready their weapons, prepared to shoot at a moment's notice. But before he could give the order, the 2 men across from him suddenly pulled out compact Uzi submachine guns from their bags, military-grade weapons made in Israel, capable of unleashing a torrent of bullets in mere seconds, far more lethal than the pistols Luo's men carried. In a flash, the tables turned. Gunfire erupted. The shootout was brutal. Luo Kundao was shot through the head and died instantly. Of his 8 men, 5 were killed on the spot, while the remaining 3 were gravely wounded. The 2 attackers walked away without a scratch, disappearing into the night before the police arrived. When authorities reached the scene, they found chaos-spent shell casings scattered everywhere. Forensic analysis revealed that the 2 gunmen had fired over 100 rounds, leaving behind 5 empty 20-round magazines. The precision and cold efficiency of the attack stunned investigators. The massacre rocked Taiwan. It quickly became one of the bloodiest shootouts in the island's criminal history, making headlines both locally and internationally. In the underworld, Luo Kundao had been a major figure, yet these 2 shooters didn't hesitate for a second proof that they feared no man, no retaliation. To fellow gangsters, they were mad men with nothing to lose. To the Taiwanese police, they were now the prime suspects in an extraordinary case. Within days, both shooters were placed on the country's top 10 most wanted list. After a period of intense investigation, police finally identified one of the 2 shooters, Lin Lai Fu, known in the underworld as Ghost Who Weeps. He was considered the most dangerous hitman in Taiwan, a living legend among criminals. But Lin Lai Fu wasn't born a killer. His descent into violence came from poverty, despair, and a life with no way out. So who was this man, really? And what turned him into such a merciless beast? Before we dive into that, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Pin channel so you won't miss out on more gripping stories and haunting criminal cases. If you've already subscribed, thank you so much. Back in the 1960s, the dark alleys of Chiayi City, Taiwan were no place for the weak. It was a brutal world where money ruled, the strong walked with swagger, and the weak bowed just to survive. In that world, a poor child like Lin Lai Fu never had a choice not in who he'd become, nor the life he'd be forced to live. Born in 1959 into a dirt-poor family, Lin never had the chance to go to school. While other children carried books, to class he wandered the streets, hustling odd jobs just to feed himself. He grew up in the slums, surrounded by thieves, gamblers, and thugs. No one ever taught him right from wrong. Slowly, he fell in with the wrong crowd drifters, petty criminals. At first, it was just small-time theft to get by. Back then, he wasn't yet cruel, just another nameless street punk among hundreds in the city. But everything changed in 1986. Early that year, while wandering the streets, Lin suddenly snatched a check from a pedestrian and used a knife to threaten anyone who tried to stop him. The police quickly issued a warrant for his arrest. With nowhere to run, he sought shelter from a gang boss. Impressed by his fearlessness, the gang took him in, assigning him to guard a local casino. In 1980s Taiwan, casinos didn't exactly hide in the shadows. They operated openly, bustling like street markets. Everyone came: day laborers, officials, even high-ranking politicians. Right outside the casino, Lin Lai-fu guarded, there was a small grilled sausage stand. The sausage vendor was a clever man. He soon realized how addicted gamblers were to chance and came up with a new gimmick, a betting game called 18 Holes, popular in Taiwan. The prize? Free sausage skewers. The rules were simple. If the vendor won, the customer had to pay. But if the customer won, they ate for free. The game quickly became a hit, drawing in gamblers and even local gangsters. On November 8, 1986, as usual, Lin Lai-fu stood by the casino entrance on watch. Around dusk, the gang boss who ran the place, Lin's superior, suddenly felt the urge to join the sausage game out front. No one knows why, but he got really into it. Round after round, he kept losing to the vendor. Still, whether he lost or not, he casually grabbed sausages off the stand, eating them without paying a single dollar. The sausage vendor could only stand by and force a smile, too afraid to say anything. Watching what had just happened, Lin Lai-fu felt his fingers itch. He wanted to try his luck too. After the boss walked away, Lin stepped up to the sausage stand and started rolling dice with the vendor. But just like his superior, Lin kept losing every single round. Thinking back to how the boss had lost earlier and still shamelessly grabbed a sausage to eat, Lin decided to follow suit. Mimicking his boss's swagger, he reached out and grabbed a sausage. This time, however, the vendor no longer smiled or tolerated it. With a cold expression, he refused. "You can't eat for free," he said bluntly. Annoyed, Lin barked back, "I'm one of the boss's men. What's the big deal if I eat one of your sausages?" The vendor curled his lips slightly in a mocking smirk. "Your boss is your boss, but a lackey still has to pay like everyone else." That sentence hit Lin Lai-fu like a slap to the face. He hadn't expected that. In the eyes of a mere sausage vendor, he was still so worthless. And in that instant, something snapped inside him. A chilling thought surged through his mind. Has everyone always looked down on me like this? Born into poverty, denied a proper education, Lin had spent his entire life hustling on the streets, never amounting to anything. That deep-rooted inferiority had always clung to him. And now, even a sausage vendor dared to humiliate him. His eyes drifted to a small knife on the counter, the one used to slice sausages. Without thinking, his hand lunged forward. He grabbed the knife and stabbed the vendor again and again. It all happened so fast. When the wave of rage subsided, Lin looked down to find his hands drenched in blood. The vendor lay crumpled on the ground, his breath gone. Horrified screams erupted from bystanders as they stared at Lin in terror. Lin Lai-fu stood frozen in the middle of the chaos, surrounded by those fearful eyes. A pool of deep red spread beneath his feet, the metallic scent of blood sharp in his nose. He knew he had just crossed a line he could never uncross. But strangely, he didn't feel afraid. There was no trembling, no remorse, and no urge to run. Instead, he felt something else creeping through his veins, something twisted and exhilarating. In that moment when the blade pierced another man's flesh, Lin had tasted power, real, undeniable power. For the first time, he held someone's life in his hands, and he realized something else too. If he had to live his life groveling beneath others, he'd rather become a boss himself. But how does a man become a leader in the underworld, someone others fear and respect? While hiding from the law, Lin thought long and hard. He came to a simple conclusion. As long as he was more ruthless than the next man, as long as he had more money, no one would ever look down on him again. And if anyone dared to, he'd eliminate them without hesitation. That was the moment Lin Lai-fu made up his mind he would never live in someone else's shadow again. He would take control of his fate, and the fate of anyone who stood in his way. But now that he was a wanted killer with the added baggage of a robbery charge, no gang was willing to take him in. Alone and unwanted, Lin drifted through the streets, beginning a new chapter as a lone outlaw. In just a few short months, he committed crime after crime across Changhua, Yunlin, and Nantou. He scouted wealthy households in advance, then struck with precision robbing homes, and at times targeting banks directly. If anyone resisted, he didn't hesitate to kill. His brutality quickly caught the attention of the police, but it also drew in a different kind of follower, desperate men with nothing to lose. Gradually, they began to rally around Lin Lai Fu. There weren't many of them, but every single one was willing to risk everything. They weren't just criminals anymore. They were a new breed of outlaws, men who had nothing left to fear. After pulling off a series of high-stakes robberies, Lin Lai Fu and his crew found themselves sitting on a large sum of money. But instead of laying low, they used most of it to purchase firearms and ammunition. Over time, their reputation spread rapidly across the criminal underworld. No one wanted to get involved with them. Everyone kept their distance. But Lin Lai Fu was never the type to sit back and stay quiet. Whether anyone provoked him or not didn't matter, he would strike first. He wanted to prove that he was the most dangerous man on the streets. If others were brutal, he would be more brutal. If others inspired fear, he would inspire terror. He began openly provoking other gangs, launching attacks right at their casinos and nightclubs. On one hand, he knew those places were loaded with cash. Every raid was a major score. On the other hand, Lin was building a name for himself, feeding his legend with every bullet fired. Each time he stepped into an enemy casino, he'd fire a few rounds into the air before robbing the place clean. He didn't care who the casino belonged to. He showed no mercy. It didn't take long before the underworld of Taiwan gave him a new nickname, Ghost Who Weeps. In February 1987, Lin and his gang kidnapped a wealthy businessman named Wu in Hamitown, located in Changhua County. During transport, the man made a desperate leap from the moving vehicle in an attempt to escape. The road was close to a police station, so Lin and his crew didn't dare chase him on foot. But that didn't stop them from opening fire from the car, sending a message to the cops, "We're not afraid of you either." Lin's infamy only grew from there. Within a single year, his gang carried out dozens of robberies at high-end entertainment spots, targeting wealthy businessmen and elites. But over time, Lin realized something. Robbery was dangerous and the risk was rising fast. So he decided to shift gears and go after a more stable income. He started pressuring other gangs to let him buy into their casinos and nightclubs, forcing his way in as a business partner. Most gangs gave in. Faced with his threats, they had no choice but to compromise. But not everyone bent the knee. One gang, led by Cho Ching-che, refused to back down. Cho made it clear he wasn't afraid of Lin Lai Fu or his thugs, but that defiance would cost Cho his life. On February 18th, 1987, inside Gorky Cafe in Nantou, Lin confronted Cho and demanded a cut of his profits. Cho flat out refused. Lin didn't hesitate, not for a second. He pulled out his gun and shot Cho dead on the spot. Less than a month later, inside a karaoke bar in Changhua, Lin struck again. This time, his target was Xia Chin Lung, another casino boss who had once argued with him over profit sharing. That argument would be Xia's last. Lin gunned him down without remorse. The deaths of Cho Ching-che and Xia Chin Lung, both prominent underworld figures, sent shockwaves throughout Taiwan's criminal world. Terrified of becoming the next target, many casino operators had no choice but to hand over a cut of their profits to Lin Lai Fu. It was either that, or end up dead. Even with money flowing steadily, Lin never lost his thirst for blood. On August 9, 1987, he and his gang went to dine at the Dongwang restaurant in Kaohsiung. Coincidentally, another local boss, Miao Tsung-cheng, was also dining there that night. Miao's table was rowdy, and the noise irritated Lin. Annoyance turned to rage. Words were exchanged, and then, without warning, Lin reached for his gun. Moments later, Miao Tsung-cheng and two of his men lay dead on the restaurant floor. Then, on October 7th of that same year, Lin Lai-fu and his crew staged a fake car accident in Yuanlin Township, Changhua County. Once the victim was lured in, they pulled a gun and executed him on the spot, stealing $20,000 and a Rolex watch. It was clear that after murdering the sausage vendor, something inside Lin Lai-fu had changed. His cruelty intensified. He became willing to kill over even the most trivial matters, turning himself into a nightmare for Taiwan's underworld. But in a place full of gang bosses and hardened criminals, was there really no one who could put a stop to him? In truth, many gangsters did vow to take him down, but each time Lin responded with acts so brutal they left the entire criminal world in shock. In 1989, in Taichung, Lin Lai-fu captured a rival gang led by a boss named Lai Zhen. He brought them to an isolated area beneath a bridge in Jushan Township, Nantou County. There, using a sledgehammer, he bludgeoned them all to death, then buried the bodies in a deep pit that had already been prepared. Lai Zhen's family launched an exhaustive search, but in the end, all they found were bones. That same year, in Chiayi, Lin gunned down his enemy, Lo Kun Tao, along with 5 of Lo's men. That act officially made him Taiwan's most wanted fugitive. After the shooting, 3 criminals Wei Chin Hung, the bodyguard of infamous arms dealer Lu Chaoqian, along with Tai Chin Tung and Shu Yi Xing, pretended to be Lin Lai-fu and kidnapped a wealthy businessman for ransom. When Lin found out he was being impersonated, he didn't let it slide. On June 8, 1989, he tracked down Wei Chin Hung and shot him dead. The very next day, Lin and his crew located Tai Chin Tung in a rice field near Taichung and executed him there. Then they hunted down Shu Yixing and killed him on a riverbank. Just a few months later, on October 11, 1989, Lin and 3 of his men broke into the home of the deputy chairman of the township council in Ta Pai. They kidnapped him and demanded ransom. At the beginning of 1990, Lin became embroiled in a dispute with another underworld kingpin, Tai Yung Chang. To assert dominance, Lin executed Tai's right-hand man, Chang Huosheng, in cold blood. The killing of Chang Huosheng sent shockwaves through the criminal world and triggered a direct confrontation between Lin Lai-fu and Tai Yung Chang. Fearing a bloody war between the 2 factions, the police decided to strike first and launched a nationwide manhunt to capture Lin. In February 1990, police in Taichung County arrested 2 of Lin's most trusted bodyguards, Huang Wenyang and Li Chunfu. Not long after, the gang's strategist Fan Shu Huang, nicknamed Black Dog, was captured in Taipei. These arrests weakened Lin's power significantly. Realizing that he was now under heavy surveillance, Lin began planning his escape, gathering money to flee the country. But even then, he couldn't let go of his violent ways. On the night of August 12, 1990, Lin ordered his subordinate, Li Chia-chang, to threaten the county magistrate of Chanchun Township. They demanded in $10 million as an escape fee. When the magistrate refused, his house came under immediate gunfire. Both of his sons were hit and seriously wounded. On the morning of October 29, 1990, Lin Lai-fu grew even bolder. He personally kidnapped a 59-year-old stock tycoon in Taichung. After successfully extorting a $30 million in ransom, Lin began preparing to flee to mainland China. He was ready to live a life on the run. But with blood on his hands and a mountain of crimes behind him, the Taiwanese police had long been waiting for the moment to bring him to justice. However, due to Lin's overwhelming firepower, police had avoided a direct confrontation. All they could do was wait for the perfect moment to strike. After months of surveillance, that moment finally came. On November 16, 1990, the opportunity they had been waiting for arrived. That day, Lin Lai-fu and his crew were driving through the city. As their car reached an intersection, 3 police vehicles suddenly closed in, boxing them in completely. Officers leapt out of their cars and fired warning shots into the air. Lin reached for his weapon, but the police had already anticipated his every move. Within seconds, he was subdued and arrested on the spot. When police searched Lin's vehicle, they were stunned by what they found: a full arsenal stashed inside. The car was loaded with 7 handguns, 3 rifles, 2 bulletproof vests, grenades, and over 500 rounds of ammunition. It wasn't just a car, it was a mobile weapons depot. Back at the police station, Lin Laifu cooperated fully with investigators. He openly confessed to the crimes he had committed over the years, some of which the police had never even known about. There were so many that he couldn't remember them all. But with his capture, the nightmare he had unleashed across Taiwan was finally coming to an end. What puzzled the police most was Lin's demeanor. He didn't resist arrest as they had expected. Instead, he was calm and surprisingly cooperative. And then, he made a request that took everyone by surprise. During his time on the run, Lin had been closely supported by his girlfriend, Adao. She wasn't just a partner, she had been his most trusted accomplice, helping him manage his affairs and often driving him from one hideout to the next. The two had already had one child together, and at the time of his arrest, Adao was pregnant with their second. The police had been searching for her for a long time, but without success. It wasn't until 3 days after Lin's arrest that Adao voluntarily surrendered herself to the Criminal Investigation Bureau, escorted by a police reporter. Since murdering the sausage vendor 4 years earlier, Lin Laifu had been involved in over 100 criminal cases and had taken the lives of 27 people. After a thorough investigation, the prosecutors indicted him, and the court sentenced him to death. Photos from that day still circulate online, Lin wearing a suit, his feet shackled in chains, preparing to walk into the ceremony. On July 25, 1991, his wedding day, Lin seemed to be in good spirits. He even smiled for the TV cameras and spoke candidly about his emotions, saying the feeling was like being out at sea, sometimes rising, sometimes falling. However, not long after the wedding ceremony with Adao, Lin Laifu was taken to the execution ground and shot by firing squad. He was only 32 years old at the time. A life soaked in blood and violence had finally come to an end, paid for with his own. Adao, in the end, was granted the title of wife, but the price she paid was losing her husband almost as soon as she had gained him. The child in her womb lost a father before even taking its first breath. And one day, when those children grow up and come to understand the truth, what will they think of the man who gave them life? Perhaps for Lin Laifu, that question left unanswered in the eyes of his own children is the harshest punishment of all.